Hi, and welcome back to See and Free Studio. This is Jennifer Langyen, and this is where we come to talk about what makes us unique, special, and different. I am super excited about today's guest. He's a really good friend of mine, Michael Shaun Conaway. Michael Shaun is a generative futurist, he'll tell us what that is, by the way, and founder of the GFI and Boldly Now. He started as a phenomenological philosopher, someone who examines life from the way life shows up moment to moment. He's co-created the field of generative futurism, the practice of generating or envisioning desirable futures at near and long time frames. He's a director of an award-winning documentary, We Rise Up, and founder of 5 successful ventures, many of which I have had the pleasure of working with over the years. I am super excited to invite him to the show today from Spain. Please welcome Michael Shaun.
Hey, Jen. Great to be with you today.
Hello, my friend. You know, people that know you know that you're going to be in a different location every time they talk to you. I was not expecting Spain this morning, to be honest. But what are you doing there? What are you up to?
Well, we've been living in the Netherlands, which is great, a really wonderful spot, but it gets dark and cold and wet in the winter. So we've scooted down to Spain where it's nice and warm and sunny. We're right on the beach here in Havea, Costa Blanca, lots of cycling, beautiful place to park yourself to do your work.
I have such envy for you and Alex, your wife, and your 2 daughters, who I guess are probably on break from university. But I love that you guys just go. You go where, you know, wherever it feels right to be in that moment. And I know that about you over the last however many years we've known each other. So that's fantastic. Well, enjoy Spain. Yeah, tell everybody what you're up to these days other than cycling along the coast. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, I think with a lot of people in their career, there are things that are bubbling along. You know, the things that you're working on, but they're not main focus of work. And a lot of my philosophical work has been like that. It's been done on behalf of clients and partners, especially for my company StoryWorks, an agency that did a lot of leadership work and a lot of consulting in that arena. And, you know, COVID gave us a time to reset and refix on what we felt was the most biggest priorities in our life. And that was making an impact on culture and beginning to have a larger dialogue with the world about what are we doing, why are we doing it, what's important, and what would we like to leave to future generations? How would we like this world and this culture, this way of interacting with one another, our approach to technology, our approach to our own human body, the planet, et cetera, et cetera. How would we like that to be in the future, and how would we like it to be left for future generations? And so we launched an educational company called Boldly Now to help people get in touch with their passion and their purpose and apply that to specific projects that might make an impact in the world. We just finished this documentary called We Rise Up, which talks about how do you rise up in the world and make an impact and a difference. And then we founded this nonprofit called the Generative Futures Initiative because we believe that imagining new futures, imagining viable futures, and futures in which are desirable or draw us forward, that are better than the Hollywood endings of the zombies or the robots taking us, is a very, very important competency for ourselves and especially for our children.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers that. I mean, we're up to a lot.
As usual, yes. You are up to a lot, and you know, but at the core of it, I think, is the purpose and passion work that you do. You do it for organizations, for teams, for community organizations, for individuals, and so you know a lot about what makes someone unique, special, and different. You probably get the concept of this show better than anyone. Would you like to share with everybody what you've come to know as your USD over time?
Yeah. Well, my purpose is to unleash the greatness of people, organizations, to bring about a thriving future for humanity. And then, you know, I think, you know, what you're diving into and what's so important is that people get that they have a unique expression of their own humanness, a gift to give the world, a purpose, an angle. And if that's discovered and properly put into place, they'll end up with a deeply fulfilling and almost always a profoundly impactful life. So even being on this call, this show, all the work I'm doing is directly related to that purpose I mentioned, unleashing the greatness of humanity.
Yeah. Well, and Michael Shaun, tell everyone how you came to discover that for yourself. Like when you really reflect back on in your lifetime and those critical moments where you realize, like, I need to live in purpose. I need this to fuel me every day and connect, the things that I do and where I spend my energy and time. How did you discover that? And was there a particular moment or moments where, you really figured this out?
Yeah. I've always been a really passionate person. And some people, they really need to find their passion or rekindle their passion or find the passion they had when they were a kid. But for me, I've always had that overflowing wellspring of passion for whatever I'm doing. But often that passion led into many diffuse ways and wouldn't be very impactful. I just go running off after the next thing that seemed exciting and interesting to me. And we started working more and more with personal growth and development companies and leadership development. And I started to see some real patterns in the way that I approach things that weren't being as impactful as I'd like to them to be. And then I actually did have to reconnect a little bit with some of my roots. I went to a Buddhist university. I had this kind of very want to do good approach to philosophical life. And so I started looking at, well, what am I doing that's effective and what am I doing that I'm passionate about? And then how does that relate to this kind of sense of values that maybe I've had for a long time? And then, as you know, we were a part of a program, 15, 18 years ago, where we got to articulate our purpose statements. And that was a seminal moment. Not that the purpose statement was necessarily something that was surprising, but that I got it written down. And at the time, it was a really long thing. I don't know if it was like 4 or 5 sentences. It was huge. But it was that starting point of being able to articulate the purpose. Now, and I always tell people that you got to get something down. You got to be able to say something as your purpose, even if it's not a very good or well rendered purpose, like if it doesn't sing or whatever, it doesn't matter. You got to say something. And then once you get that, then you'll start to notice that certain parts of it sing, or certain phrases or certain words really sing for you. And you can start to refine that. That makes it so much easier than to focus on the right things. And those right things are the ones that are important to you. For me, I've had the just great blessing and fortune to have a number of great projects and great clients and great personal projects that have helped me to not only refine the purpose, but to really find my felt sense in my heart and my body when I'm doing purposeful work. And when that happens, if I feel that connection, then there's really nothing I won't do to pursue being successful in whatever that thing is, to make the impact that I feel is out there to make. It gives you, like what Red Bull says, it gives you wings, right? That the purpose gives you wings. It lets you to leap over tall buildings and fly to places most people would not think about going.
Yeah, it does. And, it is super powerful because, to your point, and you and I were together when we discovered kind of how to articulate our purpose. We probably always had it there, but just to be able to articulate it and put it out into the world. But when you really start to spend time with it and get to know it, and ask yourself, are the things that I'm doing every day, driving my purpose, my USD, or are they taking away? Are they really sucking me dry and kind of not fulfilling that purpose? You notice, and then you can't stand doing the stuff that doesn't fulfill your purpose anymore. It becomes intolerable. And I think you've probably watched me go through a few of those moments over the years. And I'm sure I've seen you as well kind of go, this isn't for me. This is not what I want to be doing. But, now you are taking that, the power of purpose and the power of people really imagining, what's possible to a lot of things that you're doing, one of which is the Generative Futures Institute. Will you explain to everybody kind of what is the work that you're doing with the Institute and how's it coming to life?
Yeah, great question. So This movie we just did, We Rise Up, I got to interview 150 top leaders around the world, from the Dalai Lama to people like Richard Branson and Tony Robbins, et cetera, et cetera. Just amazing, amazing people. And amongst those group of people was a section of people that focus on systems design and systems thinking, really very deep stuff. And they started talking about the future in a way that I just had a hard time imagining. I'm a very visual person. I'm a storyteller. And I realized when I started grappling with this and couldn't really imagine these kinds of futures they were talking about, that more than likely most other people of the world could not imagine these kinds of alternative or different futures that might have things turn out really positive for humanity. Kind of add that with our current obsession with kind of into the world visions of humanity. Like I say, I always joke that either the robots are going to get us or the zombies are going to get us. And we have very few very positive visions of the way the human future might turn up. And if you look at how we do things with businesses, if I'm going to help a business achieve a 5-year future, the first thing we do is we go and we create a vision for that future. And at first that future may be aspirational. Maybe it's not even a future they know how to create or achieve. And then we help to kind of solidify and make sure it's really what they'd like to have. And then we start creating strategy. And the way we like to do it is strategy that's backcasted. So we start with the defined future, and we backcast to help them figure out the steps to achieve that future. And I've seen time and time again businesses be able to achieve futures that they didn't think were possible just by going through a process of imagining them, backcasting, and getting to work. Well, if you look at humanity, if we look at the next 50 and 100 years of humanity, we've got some really large problems to solve. And for a lot of people, there's not a lot of hope that we can solve them in a way that's going to work. So we started thinking, wow, if all of human beings are not having an idea of a viable future, then they don't have any idea what steps to take. They don't really know what to do, when, and why. So somebody might say, oh, climate change. I mean, what does that have to do with me? I don't even know what to do. Should I buy an electric car? The lack of understanding their relationship to the future they're creating is not their fault, but it's because we don't have any great visions to share, or that many great visions to share. So we started the Generative Future Initiative to get people the tools to be able to imagine viable futures, and then to explore how would we actually get to those futures. The human being is an amazing organism. We're amazing animals. We have this ability to imagine amazingly radically different things. The way that we solve a lot of our problems, if you look at an engineer or a biologist or somebody who's trying to solve our problems, a lot of times it's with our imagination. Watson and Crick, the story of Watson with the DNA, the shape of the helix came to him in a dream. And so how do we get access to our imagination and our vision process? And so the GFI was mostly set up to teach and share the capacity to generate futures. And so when we say generate a future, we mean imagining a future, like I spoke about with the business, and then start to get to work on, well, what are the steps that we took to get here? And then how do we realize that future? How do we move forward? So maybe you have a passion about hunger, or something you want to do with some new product that's going to make a difference in healthcare, or make a difference in X, Y, and Z space. Well, if you want to look at how that's going to work over the short term, there's a lot of tools for you to do that. But if you want to look at how that's going to work over 25 or 50 years, there's not so many tools. So the GFI is really set up to explore that. To bring together different thinkers. We've got science fiction writers and PhDs and different people coming together to help us to imagine a way to a thriving future for humanity. And there's not just one way, and there's not just one thriving future, there's many. So our work is really to do our best to help generate these positive and viable visions for humanity and our way forward. And I don't know if you've caught wind of it, but right now, a lot of us don't feel a lot of hope. There's, with COVID lagging on and political crises that we have, it's hard to feel that sense of like, hey, this is a great time. This is an amazing time to be a human being. It's an amazing time to be alive. I'm so glad to be working on. And so we're trying to fill that gap and give people that kind of inspirational home to live their life, to put their purpose to work. And then I think the ultimate outcome is that we actually find many viable pathways to human thriving.
Yeah. I mean, and that's exactly right. I think during this time, and you and I've talked about this, like, how do you create the optimism? How do you break through and give people, that hope, or at least an ability to connect to the possibility. I mean, for you, how do you keep your own hope and optimism alive, when you are kind of trying to create this new positive future, and bring people along? Like, how do you do that for yourself?
Yeah, great question, because of course I created something out of that process. So I look at the people that are out there that are doing amazing things. Like who's out there doing something great with the climate, or who's something out there doing great things with energy. And so last year about this time, we just started a simple newsletter at the GFI called Proof of a Thriving Future. And all we did is just collected some articles together, and that were like saying, hey, look, here's a company or a group or person or something that's going on that kind of gives you that sense of like, hey, if this is true, then I can see how that could lead to a thriving future. Over the past year, we've really built it out, and now we do a magazine type issue every month, sometimes twice a month, always around a theme. We did a COP26 issue. We just released an issue called The Good Ancestors. Like how do you be a good ancestor? And a lot of really interesting articles and thinkers. A wonderful futurist from London called Ada Perez, who's on a podcast with me, and I just did a TEDx talk. So I read my own magazine. I made a magazine to keep my optimism up. You can see that if you guys want to check it out at proofzine.com, proofzine.com. And because you're right, there's so much bad news. And so we're just trying to bring together some of the good news that might be cultural, technological, artistic, that helps you see that actually there's a lot of people doing a lot of amazing things in this time right now, right today. And there's a lot of things to be excited about in that realm. You just have to have some help looking for it.
Yeah, that's great. And you're right. I'm somebody that almost just prides myself on ignorance when it comes to the news these days. I never know what's going on. Michael Shaun knows my wife. He knows that she'll tell me if it's something that's in crisis or something. Yeah. That's right. She'll tell me. But I because of that, because I want to somewhat shield myself from what could be, just dousing yourself in bad news if you let it. And so I love that you found a way to penetrate that and create probably community through the work that you're doing with the newsletter, but also create some hope in a moment where people could easily fall prey to despair. And so great. So please, everyone, I encourage you to go find the newsletter at GFI and read it. My friend, I always like to ask like a random question in the middle of my show, and it's you get to pick a number between 1 and 25 to get your question. So what number would you like to choose?
7. 7 is my question.
7. Ooh, I can't wait to hear your answer. What is the best compliment you've ever received?
Oh goodness, you had to ask me a hard one, because I try to ignore compliments as much as I can. Here's the best compliment I've ever received. This movie Re-Rise Up, we did a screening a couple years ago in Boulder, Colorado, where we were living at the time, and one of my daughters was in the audience, and we had a Q&A afterwards, and what to do with Re-Rise Up, because it's really about people rising up, is we tend to turn the Q&A back on the audience and ask them questions. And so we let the audience speak a lot. At one point, my daughter got up and said, first of all, she was really proud of what me and my wife, Alex, who's the producer of the film, had done with the film. But she said that she really wanted to be like us, to be somebody that dedicates her life to making a difference. And that, like, to have your child actually see you, not as a parent, like the person that says yes or no to things, or like all the things we do as a parent, but actually to see you in the work you're doing. So I was moved by that. And then isn't that it, right? That's like, if somebody wants to be like me in some way, then that really is the best compliment. And if it's your kid, that's even cooler.
Very cool. Yeah, that is a real testament. And both your girls, I know, are, living in purpose. I've gotten to know them over the years. I've known them since they were really young. It's crazy. Our kids have grown up in kind of simultaneously. So I think that's an amazing compliment, because you've done a lot of great things, and I'm sure you've gotten praise on a number of the things you've created, even the work that you and I have gotten to do together. But that probably is, that's it. Like you might not get better than that, my friend. That might be it.
I might not even get it again.
Probably not. That was it. Just we've got it on film now. Okay. You can just watch this over and over. Well, so I mean, yes, you are a dad. You've got this, this beautiful family, and how do you convey to your daughters just the importance of living in purpose over time? How have you been able to do that and instill some of that?
Yeah, if you grow up as part of let's say a fishing family in a fishing village, and you have to pull the nets in and mend the nets every night, your children learn that taking care of the nets is the most important thing. And we have been, for as long as our kids remember, working on things that very, very specifically have a measurable impact, a measurable good from them. With our agency, the Storyworks, we declared in 2008 we would only do things that were good for the people or good for the planet. And, it meant losing a few clients, as you might imagine, but it put, it altered the environment in which we worked. And now when things were difficult, it was difficult for a cause. It was difficult for achieving something. And so I think our kids have watched us work and work hard. My wife and I, we do long hours. We have big projects. We've always worked at home, so they've always seen us working or been with us on film shoots, or if we're doing a workshop, sometimes our kids are there helping to support and things like that. But they hear how we talk about our work and how we relate to our work. Maybe somebody's comes home from an office job that's not too aligned with their purpose, and they come home and they complain. And so then your children relate to, work is something that's not great. It's hard, or it's not, you don't always get to do what you want to do. Our kids have been kind of the opposite. It's like our parents do what they love to do. They do what they want to do. They make an impact. They make a difference. And so like growing up in a fishing village, you gather what's important. To myself, to my wife, Alex, what's important is that our love and attention and care goes towards producing value and producing kind of measurable value outside of the traditional capitalistic model. Now, we do benefit capitalistic companies more money. That's not a problem. But we want to see that there's an impact on human life, or an impact on some other aspect that we're proud of in that work. And it's become like a habit. And, I think like anything that has to do with purpose or gifts that's not straight down the mainstream, like not completely aligned with what everybody else is doing, you have to practice it. You have to keep focused on it. And then after a while, it becomes your reality. You live inside of a purpose-driven reality. And so does your family, if that's something that they're immersed in as well.
Yeah, that's great. And, and I love that you and Alex do that together too, right? Like that's a privilege in itself. And I do know that about you, the two of you. As somebody who's, gone, I've been with my wife 24 years now. I think those of us that, have the privilege and honor of being with somebody in our lives for that long, and seeing like the ups and downs and ebbs and flows of the relationship and what you can create together. I mean, you guys have created everything together in the time that I've known you, and really, really great role models for your girls and for the rest of us on like what's possible when two people come together in purpose and create something amazing. So that's fantastic. Michael Shaun, you talked about, yes, you work for money, but you also do some really great things to help the world. And one of those things you've started is the Generative Futures Initiative, which we will put up on the screen here in a little bit. Will you tell us a little bit about the work that you're trying to do with this initiative that's part of, affiliated with the Institute?
Yeah, so the first thing we're working towards on funding and putting together is a series of 100-year visions for different categories. So we're doing the future of the human body, the future of the biosphere, the future of humans in space, transportation, cities, and each one of these we're putting together kind of, if you will, like an X Prize type thing where we put together money to help to support different thinkers, entrepreneurs, and if you will, future architects to write an essay in the domain that we're talking about. So for transportation, for example, we'd invite people across the spectrum to really talk about, like, what would transportation look like in 100 years? How could it be sustainable? How could it be, right now, an enormous amount of our city real estate is given up to things called roads, where cars take up place. Some people say as much as 40% of our real estate is for cars. Well, okay, that's fine for now, but in 100 years, would we want it to be that way? How might we want it to be? And so we're putting together, funds to fund people to write papers. So we'll select 10 people to write papers for each one of these. And then those 10 people will come together and they will weave their papers together into kind of one declaration of a vision of a 100-year future for that space that would be desirable and something that we all might want to work towards. So that's the beginning of it. And we have a TV show based upon the same ideas that we hope to put together after we get started, that will share these visions of these bigger futures with a whole audience in a visual way. So that's part of our expertise in filmmaking and whatnot, is to tell these kinds of stories. Now, this is not something that's it's not a zombie movie, so there's not a lot of funding out for these kind of optimistic, viable futures. So that's why we started everything as a nonprofit. And we also want to take the results that we get from these things and turn it over to the public domain. If we invent some kind of new technology or some kind of new idea, we'll try to get that technology put into the public domain so that no one specific country individual can capitalize on a groundbreaking idea or technology for the future. We want to make sure that that's open to everybody in the world that might want to work towards that future.
That's fantastic. Well, I love that. And yes, please contribute to a positive, thriving future, not the post-apocalyptic one that some people have ascribed to. So if you'd like to do that and get involved, and this sounds like a fantastic opportunity for all of these, entrepreneurs, community activists, the general population of people who really want the world to be a better place across all domains, to get involved. So please, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can snap the QR code. We'll have it posted several times during the show. And if you're on audio, just look up Generative Futures Initiative or Institute, and you will find it. Or you just can find Michael Shaun anywhere on the internet. Please get involved. This is a real opportunity to shape a future that affects all of us. And we talk a lot about living in purpose and utilizing our unique, special, and different. If we all used that for good, if we all used, what makes us tick, what drives us, our passion, our aspirations, and we pulled those together to create an amazing future, what an incredible thing that would be. So Michael Shaun, thanks for being somebody at the front of this movement and doing that for all of us. I want to thank you for coming on the show today. I want to thank you for all of the stuff that you have created in the world. I highly recommend We Rise Up if people can get a hold of it and have an opportunity to watch the documentary. I had my class recently watch the documentary, and pretty universally in their reflection, they said, what we realized is all these really impressive people that we look up to who run corporations and are world leaders, they are not happy just having money or just having fame or just being known as successful. They are only happy living in purpose. And that was a real strong message that came through the documentary as you filmed that, Michael Shaun, and they all saw it and took that away. So please, if you have an opportunity, watch the documentary and take some time to learn from some people that had to probably learn that lesson the hard way, as many of us do.
Yeah, that's on Amazon and iTunes, Google Play. If you want to go to weriseup.com, there's a link of all of them.
Perfect.
But we just released last week, actually, the general public. So this is the first time you can watch it streaming this weekend, in fact, if you want.
Wonderful. That's great timing then. So please check it out, everyone. Michael Shaun, you were with me at a time when I discovered my USD. You were instrumental and helping me stay with it. It is uncomfortable as it sometimes felt. We went through a program together, and we would go up in the mountains. It literally felt like we would go to the mountains, and then we would have to go back, to the airport or wherever we were. And Michael Shaun was always with me when we left. And so we had these incredible...
By some circumstance.
Yeah, always together when we would leave the mountains. And you were the person I was in conversation with in those moments where I doubted myself or I wasn't sure about my path. And you were there with me, and I really appreciate you for that. You've been with me ever since. And so I am glad to have a kindred spirit out there and you working together towards helping people find what makes them unique, special, and different. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And seeing the See and Free up here on the screen is really great. I remember when that was invented, and it never question, that doing this work for yourself isn't going to have a big impact. I think of that time we spent, and then all the work that's come since then, and refinement, and you grow older, you get better at these things, but you have to start. You have to get moving on it. If you're one of these people, it's like, oh, I don't know what purpose is. That's really okay. But, it's like anything else, you just have to start. It's like, I don't know how to work out. Well, try a push-up or push up from your knees, like get a little step, and then make practice and make better. So I think, and sometimes I know there's things that hold people back from being able to discover what's their uniqueness, or what are they different about, or what's their purpose. There's a lot of ways through that. Our program at Boldly Now, we call Do What You Love, Change the World, has a bunch of exercises that people can get into. And it's important that you just take some time for yourself to discover that, because all kinds of great things can come of it in time once you get latched onto that and you get that juice and that passion from being related to your purpose. We've had so many people just have amazing success stories once they knew what it is they cared about and knew how to go about making that real for themselves and making it real for the world.
Yes. Well, yes. And thank you for emphasizing that. That is what this show is all about. And I want to thank you for joining us today, Michael Shaun, all the way from Spain. I know it's the evening for you, and you're probably going to eat dinner, at like 10? if that's what you do when you're in Spain.
That's what you do in Spain, that's right.
That's right. But I do want to let you have some time with the family this evening. So thanks for joining me. I really appreciate you. Tell the family hello. And I miss you, and I'll see you hopefully at some point in the next year or two if we can travel and see each other. And
we love that.
Good. With that, everyone, I'm going to close the show. I want to thank everyone for joining us today at See and Free Studio. You can visit us at seeandfreestudio.com on all of the podcast channels. We really appreciate you coming every week and joining us. Thanks, everyone.